All right, let's go ahead and pick up where we left off with life history. We were talking about that in the last lecture, and it's a very, very important piece of information to fully understand any species, any any population, any species, ecology. You do need to know the life history of those species that you're looking at, whether you're studying a single species or you're looking at a whole community or an ecosystem. How the species maintains its population size is critical. So as we discover or as we explore life histories of individual species, I want you guys to definitely look at certain variables. So there's going to be different factors and variables that are critical to understanding this life history. And we talked about the age and the gender and those factors. Very important. But another important factor or component of every species' life history is what type of survivorship curve does that species exhibit. Now, the thing to mention here with survivorship curves, these are kind of the general patterns. There are always exceptions. There's always exceptions to how well species fits into a curve. But what we try to do is generalize it and say, okay, typically you can expect this to happen if you're a type 1 or a type 2 or a type 3 in regards to survivorship curve. So that's what I want you guys to focus on and take a look at here. Let me highlight. You have a type 1 curve up here, type 2 here, and type 3 down here. And as I mentioned, what I'm going to do is go through and give you guys the general features of each type of curve. You then have to figure out the species you're thinking of. I mentioned that in the previous lecture. Pick a species and start thinking about it and go, okay, what survivorship curve does my species best fit? It may not be perfect. Nothing in nature fits perfectly into all these categories, but which one does it best fit into? All right, so let's take a look at, if you are a type 1 curve, what can we typically expect? So take a look at the graph here. Look at the data. If you have 1,000 offspring born and they're going to live 100% of lifespan, or here's percentage of lifespan, 100%, or making it simple, if it's humans, 100 years. Out of those 1,000 babies, how many of them would be alive at certain benchmarks of the lifespan? This actually should be, 50 should be right there. Okay, so 1,000 babies born in the year 2020, 2021, 2022, etc. How many of them are going to make it to half of their lifespan? And again, if we're assuming a 100-year lifespan for humans, half of them should be there. Or, I'm sorry, how many of them will make it to half the lifespan? 50%. Well, it looks like nearly all. So think about it. Fortunately, with humans, most babies survive. Now, this varies based upon which human population you're studying. If you're looking at North America, you're going to have a certain curve. If we go to Africa, different regions in Central and South America, different parts of Asia, you may not fit the same curve. The population, if you reduce it down to a subpopulation within the big human species, you're going to see variations. We could break it out based on ethnic group, based on geographical region in the U.S. Certain parts of the U.S. have a higher mortality, infant mortality, than other parts. Certain ethnic or racial groups in the U.S. have a higher infant mortality than other groups within the U.S. So again, there's always variation, but I want you again to think about big picture. I have 100 babies born across the human population, or 1,000 babies. Let's go with that number. 1,000 babies here. And by the time they reach half their lifespan, let me get you a different color here. By the time they reach half of their expected lifespan, And in humans, again, we're just using 100 years as an easy number. We're probably going to have, out of that 1,000, 980 of those people still alive. Maybe it's 950 or 910, but the vast majority are still alive. Now they go to 60% of the lifespan. More people are dying. 70%, more people are dying. 80%, 90%. So notice the number of people still alive is dropping. This space up here is the number of people dying. So by the time you reach 98% of the human lifespan, there might only be 10 of those original 1,000 individuals left alive. So huge crash or die off of the population. All right, as we get to the end of our lifespan. So in general, type 1 organisms that exhibit type 1 survivorship curve tend to have a long lifespan. Oop, let me make some adjustments here so it's easier. They, okay. They tend to have a long lifespan. They generally have a large body size, relatively speaking. They typically have very few offspring. When they do die, they tend to die of old age, age-related issues. You know, your body just wore out. You're old. Sickness, illness, things like that. You're not really getting killed by a predator when you are a type 1. Very few predators. For the few offspring you do have, you tend to exhibit a large amount of parental care. So our elephant's a great example. She's going to live 100 plus years. Obviously, she gets big. She might only have 1 or 2 babies. She's going to, when she does die, it's usually late in life, old age, illness, injury as an older elephant. And she's going to do everything possible to take care of that baby. Huge investment in offspring. But you have very few offspring when you're type 1 survivorship. Okay? All right, so that's type 1. Type 2, notice the slope here. So you start out at 1,000 babies at the beginning. Every day somebody's dying. You're seeing a big reduction in your population size every single day, week, year, etc. So when we talk about type 2 survivorship curves, let me make some adjustments again. Organisms that fit type 2. We're just going to say they have a medium lifespan. Okay, so they're not going to live 100 years. They might only live 2, 3, 5, 8, whatever years. They can be prey species, or they can be predator species, or they can fit in both groups. So those rabbits there, they are prey, but they're also predators. Anybody with a garden, they're going to eat your garden, but the rabbits also can be eaten by hawks and owls and cats and snakes and foxes and coyotes and all sorts of other things. When we talk about offspring, they tend to have multiple offspring per birth. They may have multiple births or multiple reproductive events in the course of their lifespan. You know, in the course of one season, Mama Rabbit this year, starting in the spring and going through the summer, might have 2 or 3 litters of rabbits. Each litter might have 6 to 8 babies. So you do the math. Wow, 3 litters, 8 babies. That's 24 potential babies. But a lot of them get killed. they're killed at any point of their lifespan. So predators get them, lack of food gets them, just again, all sorts of things can kill these guys. And they tend to have a medium body size. I mean, they're not gigantic things, but they're not tiny things. It might take weeks to months to grow to maturity. It's not going to take 15 years like an elephant. So we do see, like, it's a trade-off. If I'm going to grow and get really, really big, I can't have a lot of kids because it takes me a long time to get there. If I'm going to have this medium lifespan, I better grow pretty quick. I'm not going to get as big. I'm going to have a bunch of babies. And when it comes to parental care, there is some parental care, but not nearly the level we see in type 1. So again, Mama Rabbit does what she can, but it's a numbers game. If I have more babies, odds are one or two of them will survive, and then they'll keep passing on the genetics. Okay, third type of survivorship curve. Right off the bat, majority of your population is not surviving. Majority of your offspring are not going to make it through that first couple days or weeks of life. So big difference in strategies here. So when we talk about type 3 survivorship, in general, these organisms have a very short lifespan. Typically, they have a very small body size. They're very, very quick to grow, develop, and reproduce. Large numbers of offspring. I mean, think about a frog. It may lay hundreds of eggs. Think about coral spawning. Thousands and thousands of eggs and sperm go into the water column to hopefully fertilize. Typically zero parental care. Coral, eggs and sperm in the water, fertilization, whew, away it goes. Hey, hopefully something survives. It's a numbers game. Most of these guys in type 3s tend to be prey species. Lots of things eat type 3 survivors or type 3 organisms. Not that they can't also be predators. Frogs eat other things as well, but they tend to have a lot of predators when you're type 3. But again, you're playing a numbers game here. Can I produce enough babies to literally overwhelm any predator that's trying to eat all of us? And some of my kids will survive. So again, these are not absolutes that you have to fit in here. It's general. So let's take the big picture of something like an oak tree, a white oak. A white oak will live a long time. It takes a lot for it to grow up and mature. So it's got this huge body size. It's long lifespan. But then when we look at the other characteristics here under type 1, it doesn't fit that. Offspring? Whoo! It's got a lot. Oak trees may drop thousands of acorns. There's zero parental care. And oak trees in general are prey species. They're producers. They're at the bottom of the food chain. So lots of things eat these. So that's why I said the species you're thinking of may not fit exactly into a type 1, 2, or 3 curve. Figure out its characteristics. These are generalizations. We'll do a lot of that with ecology because we're talking about living things. Living things don't always fit into black and white criteria because things are always adapting and evolving and changing, which means as ecologists, we have to do the same thing. We have to keep adjusting and changing and adapting our models to understand the diversity of life out there. Okay? So in the next lecture, we're going to continue talking about characteristics we use to understand the life history.